of House Report 112-616. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have an amendment at the desk, number 25.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 25, printed in Part B of House Report number 112-616, offered by Mr. Posey of Florida.
Pursuant to House Resolution 738, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Posey, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'd like to yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Madam Chair, the Florida International Bankers Association has reported to me that over the past several months, they have seen as much as $300 million leaving for overseas banks. Why is this money leaving the United States? And what can we do to stop the hemorrhaging? Adoption of this amendment will stop the hemorrhaging of hundreds of millions of dollars, soon to be billions of dollars, if this amendment is not adopted. This is according to studies on earlier scaled-back proposals by the Internal Revenue Service. For nearly 100 years, the United States has had in place a policy that encourages foreigners to put their money in the United States, in our banks. We've told them that the United States is welcoming and a safe place for their deposits. Earlier this year, apparently clueless about the financial conditions we are in as a nation, the IRS finalized a new rule to take effect January 2013 that basically sends the message to law-abiding foreign depositors that U.S. banks doesn't want their money. Under this rule, the United States would no longer provide these law-abiding depositors with the confidentiality that they've had and that they need. The new IRS rules would impose cumbersome new reporting requirements for law-abiding foreign depositors and for foreign depositors who live in nations where corruption is rampant. They will simply withdraw their money from the United States institutions and put the money to work in other nations around the world. This is bad for the United States economy. There's been a strong bipartisan opposition to the IRS's proposal. The entire Florida delegation, all 25 members, Republicans and Democrats, every Republican and every Democrat, wrote the Treasury last year asking them to withdraw the regulation. Bipartisan letters have gone to the Internal Revenue Service urging them to withdraw the regulation. And bipartisan legislation has been filed in the House and the Senate to stop the regulation. Each day Congress refuses to act, deposits are leaving the United States for Singapore, Panama, the Bahamas, the Cayman Islands, and elsewhere. And this money will not return to the United States once it leaves. And most importantly for our communities, this capital will not be available to our small businesses and families when they need it to build in America. The new regulation will harm the U.S. economy, and we must stop its implementation. Ironically, the same regulation from the IRS was rejected about 8 years ago when bureaucrats at the IRS thought it was a good idea then. A strong bipartisan effort in Congress led to the IRS withdrawal of the rule, and we must do that again today. If you share my commitment to economic recovery and believe that the United States should be a welcoming place for foreign depositors who want to put their money to work in the United States, then I urge you to join in support of this amendment. Please vote yes, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts rise?
To oppose the amendment.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Massachusetts for 5 minutes.
I yield myself 2 minutes. I understand that the banks in America don't like this because they would like to continue to be a place where people can come from other countries or send their money from other countries and not have it reported back home. The problem is that in America, we suffer a much greater loss right now from Americans who evade their taxes. Most Americans don't. But taxes being parked in the Cayman Islands, which was just mentioned, and elsewhere, are a problem. And we passed in 2010 a bill to try and get money owed to the United States paid to the United States. That requires the cooperation of other governments. Members are aware of the negotiations with Switzerland and other tax havens. What this says is, we, the United States, want you to help us collect taxes owed to us, but we won't do the same. It is the tax evaders' Bill of Rights. The gentleman from Florida says, well, they're law-abiding citizens. Most of them probably are. But how does he know they all are? Why do people in the Cayman Islands want to put money in American banks? Maybe there are perfectly good reasons. Maybe they want to come visit their money someday. But the fact is that people who send money to other countries include people who evade taxes. And what this says to the United States is we basically are going to have to abandon the effort to collect taxes owed to us in foreign countries because we are telling the foreign countries we will not cooperate with them. We have tax treaties that we are pursuing. This basically aborts that. So yeah, Americans who want to send their money elsewhere and not pay taxes, they like this idea. The American banks, well, let me say this. People have said, well, they'll send their money elsewhere. The notion that we should compete in a race to the bottom, the notion that we should match other countries in an absence of rules is a philosophy that gets us in trouble. I believe if we work hard, we will get a number of countries in this. But that's the essential point. If members favor a vigorous effort by the United States government to recover taxes owed to us from elsewhere, they should reject this amendment. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Florida.
How much time do I have left?
Gentleman has 2 minutes remaining.
This is not just about banks. This is about jobs. This is about mortgages. This is about the economy, and this is about our communities prospering. Information can be shared today on a case-by-case basis, and if the IRS suggests to you otherwise, it's just not true. There's a common misperception. Let's not forget how fortunate we are to live in the United States of America. Too often, too many people forget this, it seems. We live under a stable government and a relatively stable economy compared to some of the other countries we receive deposits from. Many non-residents' deposits come from countries where the governments themselves are very unstable, where their personal security and the security of their property are major concerns. It's very probable that the depositor's personal bank account information could be leaked to unauthorized persons in their home country, governments to criminals or terrorist groups, which can make the depositors and their families targets of extortion, kidnappings, and other potential fatal criminal activities. Imagine living with that over your shoulder every day. Assurance from the IRS bureaucrats that your information is safe won't calm those fears. I mean, our Pentagon's been hacked. I asked the Secretary of the Treasury if we would stand personally liable for any breaches that would cause loss of life or harm to people whose information was betrayed, and they said they were not willing to do that. I reserve the balance.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
I'll yield myself the balance of my time. In fact,
Gentleman is recognized for 3 minutes.
we suffer more from taxes evaded in the U.S., I believe, than the money we have here. The point, however, is, and I will, when the House becomes the House, submit the comments from the Department of the Treasury, we will not be sending this to countries with which we don't have a tax treaty. There are strong statutory and regulatory requirements that prevent this information from being sent to countries that abuse it. Now, maybe members think that's not strong enough. If the gentleman from Florida would like to submit legislation to strengthen those statutory requirements to make it clear that some countries qualify and some don't. For example, I am informed Venezuela today would not qualify for obvious reasons because of the brutal, corrupt nature of that government. So the question is, because some governments would abuse it, should we protect every tax evader who wants to use the United States as a haven from having the money reported at the price of not getting cooperation ourselves? That doesn't mean everybody puts the money as a tax evader. If you're not a tax evader, then there's no problem with having this reported. And as far as the Pentagon being hacked, yeah, people have been hacked. If the IRS was going to be hacked, a lot more would have happened. But the fact is that the security of tax returns in America is one of the best things about our government. Administrations of both parties, for time immemorial, have protected the security of tax returns. We have a very good record as a government. We shouldn't just denigrate it with no basis in protecting the integrity of tax returns. People have filed tax returns and have had great privacy in them. So this is the central point, because some of the banks would like to get this money and not care whether people are tax evaders or not. The gentleman says we can do it case by case. An impossible task, case by case, to decide. And then the IRS becomes more intrusive. You what? Do a frisk of each individual to decide whether he or she has his returns done? Case by case is the way you destroy privacy. Here's the fundamental point. We are making efforts to collect taxes owed to us by people who have hid the money elsewhere. and we know that's been a problem. This would make it impossible to do that with any efficiency. And as I said, there are very clear statements of policy against sending this information to Venezuela, against sending it to other places where it wouldn't be secure. This is the question. Are we going to allow American standards for trying to impose taxes that are legitimately owed here to be eroded by other countries? The gentleman mentioned the Cayman Islands. I don't want the Cayman Islands to set the standard for American tax collection. I don't want the gentleman mentioned that the Cayman Islanders are sending money here. I don't want the Cayman Islanders and their desire to set the standard for American tax collection practices, for the need for America to do the right thing. So those people who are lawfully investing money will not be frightened by this, and America's ability to get taxes owed to us would be destroyed by this amendment.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Florida has 30 seconds remaining.
I don't know how many deadbeat taxpayers there are in Venezuela or Cuba or Iran, but I think it's ludicrous to think that we would want to put American investments in other countries. We're looking at, according to the Mercatus Center for Study at George Mason, a possible capital flight of $88 billion, and this is opposed to maybe at the high side estimating we'll recover $800 million from tax cheats, hopefully. That's just not good percentage. That's not a good investment. That's bad business in any sense of the word. I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of this good, common sense bill that will help our economy recover and help America stay strong. Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Florida. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Madam
the
Chair,
amendment is agreed to.
I ask for a recorded vote.
The gentleman requests a recorded vote. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Florida will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma rise?
I do move that the committee do rise.
Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized. The question is on the motion that the committee rise. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the committee rises. Mr. Speaker, the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union, having had under consideration H.R. 4078, directs me to report that it has come to no resolution thereon.
Thank you. The chair of the Committee of the Whole House of the State of the Union reports that the committee has had no consideration.